Hi everybody, my name is Ryan, and I'm here to talk about my generator and how I came to purchase the one I purchased and why I have it and why I use it. Okay? Now, I purchased a Yamaha EF2000. I purchased it off of the Generators Direct website. I think that they had the best price, and the shipping was included in that price, and there was no tax. On a $1,000 unit, it's a fair amount of money. Okay? There's a couple reasons I chose this unit, and I kind of want to go through exactly how I did that. Now, when you're picking out a generator, I would say that the two largest factors you have are how much you're willing to spend and how much power you actually need. Okay? There's a lot of other factors, and I'll go through that, why I chose this unit. So I was willing to spend a few more dollars for all of the features, so I invested in this unit, which is expensive for the amount of wattage it makes. However, the other features to me made it worth it. So how did I figure out how many watts I would need out of this unit? Well, let's go into that. One of the many accessories, and we'll go over accessories in a minute or two, that you would want to purchase for the generator or before the generator is a device that can measure wattage of various loads that you're going to have in your house. Okay? So for me, I purchased this unit. It is available on the website, Generators Direct, if you want, or get them other places. They're fairly common. It's about $30, and if you type in the search term watt meter, this will come up within the first 3 or 4 in the list. There's also another unit called the kilowatt. Here's a picture of it in a package. The kilowatt comes in a bunch of different versions, but the long and the short of it is it's kind of difficult to use, and since it's kind of a box, it would have to plug into the front of the generator. It would block a bunch of the controls and other things. This unit, which is the Amwatt, you can see here, Reliance, this is a really simple unit. It has a plug on one side that would go into the generator or into an outlet, and then it has a plug on the back side right here where you plug the load you want to measure into it. On the side there's a switch. You can measure between watts and amps, and since we're measuring in wattage, which is pretty much what the unit's rated in, we're going to use the switch on watts so we can very easily see how much something uses. Okay? Now the EF2000 is, they say it's a 2,000 watt, but in reality it's a 1,600 watt, 1,600 watts consistent load. Some loads have a motor in it, like an air conditioner or a refrigerator has a momentary startup load that's much higher than the load they have once they're already going. So we can get into that a little bit more later. But it's a 2,000 watt starting and 1,600 watt consistent. Okay? So let me talk about briefly why I purchased this particular unit, why I have it, and how I figured out how many watts I need. Okay, everyone, we're in my living room, and the reason why we're here is to show you why I decided it was important for me to purchase a generator. I'd like to introduce you to my fish tank. This is a 105-gallon tank. There's not too many fish in there right now, but there's coral, and there's a lot of stuff in there that that's actually very fragile. So keeping this environment consistent and keeping the lights on and keeping the pumps running, keeping all this going is really important. So if it goes out for more than 9-10 hours at a time at maximum, the conditions are going to start to degrade, and the fish and the coral are going to suffer. Especially in the wintertime, if the house gets cold because the heat isn't working, this tank's going to get cold and things will start to die. Okay, everyone, so the question we have to ask ourselves is how much power does this tank draw? There's a lot of different things in here. We have the light up top, it's a fluorescent light. We have another light in the bottom, and we have various pumps and filters and things that run. And there's also an electric heater which draws a fair amount of energy. Now I've made sure that the heater is turned on, and if we come over to the corner here, this is where the tank is normally plugged in. Now if you look here, you can see that this gray wire is the tank power strip that runs all the accessories, and the blue thing, this is the measuring device we talked about before, is plugged into the outlet. So you can see we've pretty much just put the measuring device between the wall outlet and the tank's power strip. So we can see here we have it set to watts, the switch. The tank is clearly drawing 523 watts about. So we'll say 530 watts. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a list. So the tank is the first thing on the list. It's running 530 watts. we've moved upstairs to the kitchen. I'm buying a generator, and I'm going to buy it for the tank, but since I'm buying it, I have to think about some other things. What else would I want to run on this machine should the power go out? So I try to think of a list of critical loads, things I want to run. The other is my refrigerator. Now, what I did was I took the wattage measuring device and I plugged it into the fridge, and the fridge pulls 190 watts when it's running. Keep in mind, this is when the compressor is going, so that's the maximum it would draw. So we add that to the list. This is my my furnace. It is a natural gas fired furnace, so as long as the electricity can run the electronics and whatnot, then the furnace itself will continue to burn gas, because natural gas doesn't ever go out around here. I mean, short of an earthquake, which we don't get, we have a steady supply of natural gas. So if we can power the unit, we can have heat during a power failure for not too much electricity. So what we have to power is the electronics inside the unit, okay? And that's, I've measured it, it's about 80 watts when the unit's turned off, which is not a lot of power. When the flame comes on, the system draws about 150 watts, okay? That's to run this circulator pump right here. So what happens is the furnace heats the water in the system. This pump pumps the water up through these pipes and up into the house, and that keeps the house warm. So we're going to say 150 watts is what it takes to run this unit. We're going to add that to the list. Okay, so now we made a list of all the critical loads that we would like to run with this unit, and they add up to 865 watts. Now, this is the minimum, bare minimum of wattage that we would need to run the bare essentials that I've defined or I feel important are for me. So what you should do is make a list, and then you can measure those, and then you have an idea of how much wattage you would need. Now, Yamaha does, since I only need 865 watts, Yamaha does make a 1,000 watt unit. It's about $700 and our generator's direct. However, that's not very realistic. Since I'm buying the machine, what else is available? Well, I can buy a 2,000 watt generator for approximately $200 more. It uses only a little bit more fuel, which we'll get into in a little bit. It only costs about $200 to $300 more when you all said and done. And it allows me to run other things. What else would I want to run? Well, I'd like to run some lights at night so I can see what I'm doing. I would like maybe to run a washer or a dryer, so you should test those. Maybe that's something you want to do. We don't have power go out that often, but when it does go out, we really need to keep that fish tank running, and might as well keep everything else running too. Sandy was a strong lesson for us. Sandy came by only about 6-8 months ago, and it tore the place up. If you look at some of the damage here, this is not very typical of our area, but you can see all these big oak trees and came down on the power wires. Tremendous amount of damage to the electrical system. We were out for 14 days, and the generator came in big handy right there. So let's talk about this generator right here. So we're going to run at about half of its rated amperage. Remember, it's about, wattage. It's about 1,600 watts is its maximum continuous output. We're running about half that. That gives us about another 700 watts that we could play around with and power other things. So what else do we need? The generator is not the only thing we're going to require. When you're putting your budget together for how much you want to spend, you have to factor in a few other items. So let's take a look at those. Okay, so here's a short list of accessories you'd want to purchase for the generator. This is the generator itself, and it comes in a box. Comes with the manual. It comes with a spark plug wrench to change the spark plugs. It also comes with this special adapter, which allows you to charge 12 volts. It's got a special plug and jumper cables, and that allows you to plug in a 12 volt battery direct to the unit. It goes in this hole right here, and that allows you to charge a 12 volt battery, which is kind of convenient if you need to be able to do that if you're running an inverter or charging a car battery or something. Just remember that that counts against your total 1,600 watts, so you'd have to measure that out, and you need to know how much the battery is drawing, so you need a similar device to measure the draw of charging a battery. Okay, the next device I really feel is important to own would be an hour meter. Now, a lot of generators have hour meters on them already. This one does not, so you'd have to purchase it separately. It was a $40 item, and here it is. It It measures the total hours the generator is run, and when it's running, it measures the RPMs of the engine, which isn't super important for us, but it allows you to plan your maintenance intervals. As you get to certain milestones on the engine, you're going to want to change the oil, change the spark plug, and things like that. So this is the hour meter. See here, the meter right now only has 6.2 hours on it. And if this were a running unit, it would be counting up. Now, the next thing you're going to want to purchase is oil. Now, there's a lot of debate on the websites about what type of oil to use, synthetic or regular. It is my sincere belief that synthetic oil is far superior to that of regular oil. It's much better for air-cooled engines, which is what the Yamaha uses and most generators use. It's seriously like $2 or $3 extra for a quart of it. You're going to use basically half a quart at about a pop. You're going to after the 20-hour change, you're going to change it once every 100 hours. So the cost is very negligible, and if you take care of the unit, you'll probably get several more 100 hours out of it before it's going to need any major service by simply putting in a better oil. I'm going to recommend that you put in a synthetic type oil. The next thing, what we talked about, is the measurement device to measure the wattage of things. Not only would you want to use it for generator planning, but when you actually operate the generator during a power outage or operate it out on a campsite or whatever, having this is really important because you can measure how much you're drawing for it instead of trying to guess. You know, am I going to overload it putting this extra light on or this extra load? You can watch it. And it's really important because if you overload a generator really badly, it'll just shut down. The overload light will come on and it'll stop giving you power. But if you overload it slightly, it can continue to run, which will shorten its life. It'll cause electronics to heat up, and that's bad. Next thing you want is a good quality extension cord, and you want a cord that's rated to your particular generator. This generator outputs 1600 watts continuous power, so we want an extension cord that can handle 1600 watts. And if you look at the tag on this cord, it clearly says the cord is rated to 1875 watts, at its given length. So this is a 100-foot cord. It can take 1,875 watts, 100 feet. You don't want to use an underrated cord because you'll lose voltage, one, which is not good. It means the generator works harder to power the same items. And two, the cord could overheat and you could theoretically start a fire, which you don't want to do. Decent power strip. This is an old one that I had lying around, but it allows you to, once the cord gets into the house, if you're not going to tie it in anywhere, it allows you to plug loads into it. And last but not least, some sort of gas can. Now this is the minimum of what I think you should have on hand. It's a 2-gallon gas can. This generator was supposedly run about 10 hours at a quarter load on 1 tank of gas. So it takes 1.1 gallons or so. So if you have the generator full, plus 2 gallons of gas, you could, if you ran it, let's say 10 hours a day for easy math, you could run almost 3 days on this unit. I can get away with that with my fish tank, so that's maybe something I can plan. Now, I personally have several other 5-gallon jugs I keep in the garage, so I keep up to 32 gallons available if I need it, and that could run me for almost 20 days, almost continuously. I probably wouldn't do that. I could stretch it out, but one of the considerations we had here in the Northeast was Hurricane Sandy. It knocked us out for some places for up to 3 weeks. We were out for about 2 weeks, and that's a long time to be without power. Now, when the entire island was without power, or more major portions of it, we were also out of gasoline because we were unable to use the gas pumps because there was no electricity. So there was no gas available. And that was a little scary because we had gas lines or lines of cars at the gas stations, and people fighting over fuel, things like that. A gas station would receive a shipment, and there'd be a line going a couple blocks down. So for our use, to have a significant amount of gas on hand was important. Okay, I'm just going to talk briefly about a few of the other advantages of this unit over some of the others. Now, they make these larger units, Generac, or generally they're about 5,000 watts, and they cost substantially less than this. Now, one of the major reasons why I spent more for this is its fuel consumption. we looked at my critical loads, and with some extra room built in, we realized I don't need much more than what this provides. 1600 is plenty of watts for me. So I have a machine that makes 5,000 watts, while yes, it's really nice to have the extra capacity, is going to wind up burning considerably larger amounts of fuel. This particular machine has the inverter system, which is what creates electricity. It's electronically controlled, which creates the clean power source, so you don't have to worry about blowing up a computer, Blu-ray player, or television if you're going to use that kind of stuff. Or medical equipment, if one of your critical loads maybe you have a sick person in the house and they have equipment hooked up to them, this is what you'd want to use. You wouldn't want to use a more conventional generator, which has called a stator inside it. Now, the larger units have to spin, the stator units, the non-inverters, have to spin at a constant RPM in order to maintain their voltage and their standard of electricity. This unit can actually slow down the engine RPMs if you're not using its full capability. That's huge. So if I'm only using my critical loads, I'm only using half the unit's capacity, it will slow the engine down and save fuel. The larger units can burn, I've seen them burn 8 gallons of fuel in 5 hours. That's a lot of fuel, especially if you're in a sandy situation like we were, where we weren't able to get more gas. This unit, running at a quarter load, or I'm going to run at about a half load, will burn 1 gallon in about 8 hours. So I'm going to get about 8 hours per gallon of fuel. So if you want to do the math, I'm going to get a lot of runtime out of this unit. Okay? And I'm going to be able to power what I need. And if I wanted to, I can add more load to it and burn a little bit more fuel depending on what my situation is. So that's really important for me. The other consideration, well, the other ones, is that I live in suburbia. I have neighbors behind me on both sides. And the larger units are very noisy. You can hear them blocks away. We had, during Sandy, people would bring generators in and they'd run them at night and you'd hear them. This unit is quiet. It's one of the things they tout at the website, and they tout in general if you read a lot of the reviews and do some research. It's quiet, and we're going to hear it later. So that was a huge deal for me. Okay, everybody, we're in my garage, and again, I want to illustrate the point of how great it is to have a small portable generator. This is it. It's up here on a shelf. I keep a towel on it. It keeps the dust away and keeps bugs and things from living in it. You can purchase a nice cover for it on the Generator's Direct website. But I've opted to use the towel. It works pretty well for me. Here's the extension cord that I can use to get the power into my house. And over here, this little bucket right here is where I keep all the accessories. So you can see I have the amp metering devices in there. I've got a power strip, got a few other doodads. If you look on the bottom, that white wire is the battery charging wire that comes with the unit. See the manuals in there, and the spark plug wrench is that long thin metal piece right there. So all the accessories for the generator are right here. Everything I need to deploy it quickly and safely is right up here. Okay, I've moved outside because I want to further illustrate the portability of this unit and why it's, frankly, so awesome for me. I am fortunate enough to have a full-size pickup truck. You can see it behind me over here. And here's the unit. It fits very comfortably in the bed. Now, this is a standard bed. The generator fits very comfortably under my roll-on cover. So that gives you a lot of logistical advantages. Basically, it's out of the rain, so if you want to take it camping or you're going to have it back here for a few days, all of your stuff, including your generator, are protected from the elements. Also, they're protected from people who may want to steal it. So, you know, it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and it's protected, which is important to me. If you have one of the larger units, the 5,000 watters that seem to be pretty popular, they're portable generators. However, if you have to put one in the bed of this truck, the generator, and I've had one back here, sits higher than this cover, which means the cover would have to be retracted while the generator was back there. So you would have to ride with the cover open. Again, you lose the advantage of having it out of the rain and having it out of sight. The other issue I've had with the larger generators, the 5,000 watters or something in that family, is that they're very heavy. It takes me and another person pretty much all we have to pick it up and get it into the bed. This generator, I picked this up and put it here myself. Now, the other thing you can do is, and if you really want to, is you could actually run this back here with the cover on it. So let's say you were in a rainstorm or inclement conditions and you don't want the generator getting wet. I have in the past taken the unit, you plug it in, you get it running, and you can kind of just spin it a little. Oh, other way. You can kind of spin it, point the exhaust out the bed of the truck, and you can get away with that. I would be careful though, because this is a confined space. You would just kind of stick your hands in here and make sure it's not overheating. But there's plenty of room back here to run the machine if you wanted, if you had to. But for storing it, it's great. The other thing I like about this machine, again, because it's so light, if you're not fortunate enough to have a pickup truck like this, you can put it in the trunk of a car. And here we are. I'm with my girlfriend Michelle.
Hi.
And she has so graciously volunteered to demonstrate how easy it is to put the EF2000 in the trunk of her car. This is Michelle's trunk. As you can see, it's
Don't look in there.
has the usual assortment of random payload. And I've already taken liberty putting in the gas can, the extension cord, and the little box of accessories. Now Michelle, if you demonstrate just how easy it is to put the generator in the trunk of your car. It is just that easy, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so here's the front panel of the unit. Okay, we're going to go over all the parts of it individually. This is the low oil light. Now if the machine is running low on oil, which is really important for it, it will shut off and it will turn, and this red light will come on to tell you you have to put oil in it. This green light is the AC or alternating current. Basically it's telling you that the voltage is there and the machine's running. Overload light comes on if you overload the unit. Now if you try to draw too much from it, what will happen is this green light will go off and this red light will come on. The engine will continue to run, but it won't make any power and that light will come on. All you have to do is shut the engine off and restart it and you're good. This is the pull start. We're going to go over this in a little bit. Okay, this is the economy switch. When it's off, the system's always going to run at high RPMs. If you're running an air conditioner or a really high power load, you'd probably leave this in off, because what happens is when it's turned on, the machine slows down depending on how much power you need. But if an air conditioner suddenly kicks on, it might be going too slow and it could stall the machine. So most of the time we're going to run with that on. This is the engine stop and on switch, so if it's in the stop position the engine won't run or start. We would turn it on right before starting it so that the spark plug will fire and it'll run. This right here is the fuel petcock. So right now it's off, so fuel in the fuel tank up here can't get down into the carburetor, which is part of the engine that mixes the fuel with the air and all that stuff. So what we're going to do is when we start off. We're going to turn it on. This generator is cold. It has not been run in a couple days, and there has been no fuel in the carburetor. I drained it out, which I'll talk about later. So this is a cold generator with an empty carburetor. So it's probably not going to start on the first pull, but I wanted you to see what it's like to start this thing while it's cold, because that's where it really counts. Okay, this is the choke, so you would need to pull this out in order to get the engine to start when it's cold. These two doodads right here are one of the features which I forgot to go over earlier. This generator you can slave to another one just like it. So if you had two Yamaha EF2000is, you could plug two plugs into here, and then there would be another set that would plug into another generator exactly the same as this one, and they would work together. So instead of having 1600 watts, you would have more like 3000. It doesn't really quite double, but you'd have about 3000 running watts and 3600 surge watts. It doesn't quite go to 4000 because of the way the units work together. These are the plugs. This is where the current comes from to run all your appliances. This is that battery charger we talked about before, that little white wire, this thing that came with it, so you can plug it in there and charge a battery. This is just the DC circuit breaker for this, so if you try to pull too much power out here, this pops out. And this is a ground where if you're using the twin tech, you would tie this to the other generator. Okay, so let's start her up. This will probably take a couple pulls. Oh, okay, 2 pulls, and the generator started. Now, you heard it speed up, and then immediately it slowed down. So this is its idle speed. It's actually pretty quiet. So let's take a walk across to the other side of the backyard and just listen to it. I've let the unit run for about 30 seconds and I've pushed the choke lever back in, and you can hear how quiet it is at idle speed. I'm speaking in a normal voice. There's some nature sounds around me. I'm upstairs in the master bedroom and I'm speaking at a pretty soft volume. If I stick my head out the window, I can see the unit down there. You can kind of hear it, but it's not that loud. As soon as you step away from the window, now the window's open. I'm on the setting of the bed. It's pretty quiet. Windows open, there's a generator outside. That's pretty awesome. So this is the cord that will be plugged into the generator when we are ready to power it up. There's a couple ways you can run power in your house from a generator. The easiest and safest way is to use power strips. So this cord would get plugged into a power strip like so, and then this power strip would run the house. You'd have to take more extension cords, plug into the strip, and I'd have to run one to the fish tank, one to the fridge, and that can get tedious, but that would be the safe way to do it. Some people do something called a double-ended male extension cord. If you want to research that on your own, you can do that. That allows you to tie in from one outlet and go to another. That could be dangerous because you'll have a bare end male sticking out, which will have electrical current on it, and you can electrocute yourself. So you do so at your own peril. I've created a tie-in to my main breaker box. Okay, so let's take a look at my setup briefly. We have the wattage meter here. It's connected into my tie-in, which would be hooked up to this breaker, which I have turned off. Now we have to bear in mind this is a 120 volt generator. Most panels can power 120 volt and 240 volt loads. So there's only one 240 volt load on this panel, and that's the central AC. So I have that switched off right now because we can never hope to power it with the small generator. That's a whole different class of generator altogether, something that's connected to the house permanently. So we have to turn that off because we can't run it. Okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to simulate a power failure. Okay? This is the main breaker for the house, and we're going to turn it off. Okay, the lights have gone out. The fan over on the other side of the basement is off. The power is effectively out. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is plug in the generator outside. Okay. Here we go. Here's the other end of the cord. You can see there's an orange light on there that indicates I have power from the generator. And we are going to go ahead and plug that in. Pardon my crude video here. We plug that in to the amperage meter. Now the amperage meter should be reading close to 0. It's got 5 watts. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to power up the house on the generator. So here we go. Alright, the lights have come on. Okay, we're upstairs in my fish room, and this is my fish tank. You can see it's running. The lights are on. The pumps are running down in the sump area. They have no idea there's a generator running on them. So the fridge upstairs is going to be running. The heat is connected to that box, so it'll be turned on. So we can see while we budgeted 865 watts, right now the whole system's only pulling about 700 right now, or 670, depending on what's in this little box right here. I haven't edited it in yet. But point being, we now have power, and as long as that generator is running, this will continue to operate, and my fish will be safe. But there is one more load I wanted to check, and that is the air conditioner. Now, this was not something I anticipated or ever meant to try and run. However, it would be nice during a hot, humid night in August to be able to run the air conditioner. It would keep the girlfriend happy, and in turn keep me happy. So let's go ahead and take a look and see if we can run it. Okay, so here's the air conditioner control. This line is coming from the generator, and it's going into the wattage meter. So right now the AC is actually pulling 5 watts. You know it's off. That's just to run the electronics in the off state. It does draw a little bit of power. So we're going to watch the generator, and we're going to turn on the AC and see what happens. It's on. The fan motor is turned on. Let's move the compressor. Oh, there goes the compressor. So now it's pulling about 1800 watts. That's a lot of power. The generator is really going fast now. It's really trying to catch up to get this motor going. Oh, there it goes. Alright. And the AC is on. I can feel cold air coming out. And we're pulling about 900 watts to run this bad boy. The fan is on high. But it's working. So that's great. So we looked at the startup wattage, and it took 1800 watts to start it. And remember, the generator only has about 2000 watts of surge power. so you only have about 100 watts of leeway, but I guess that could run a light or something. But if we were going to turn this on, we'd probably have to turn the fish tank off in order to let this turn on. The other thing we'd have to worry about is that the big surge is going to happen every time the compressor kicks off and then wants to kick back on again. So one of the things we might do is try to run the air conditioner on high, and so once the compressor's on, it stays on, and you can turn the fish tank on, and it'll all run together until the compressor turns off and then it tries to turn on again, if that makes any sense. But here we are, it'll run the air conditioner. Okay, just to wrap this up, I wanted to cover one more point that I feel is very important, and that is to talk about ethanol. When you buy fuel in New York State gasoline, it's 10% ethanol, and ethanol is nasty. When it's exposed to moisture, even just the moisture in the air and the humidity, especially in the summer, it turns to a gummy substance, and it gets sticky and gooey, and that can clog all the delicate internal parts of a carburetor, all the little pinhole orifices and small moving parts, which will cause your generator to run less efficiently or not run at all, which would suck. So I'm going to show you a quick procedure that I use to get the ethanol out of the carburetor. Now, I do this if I'm not going to run the generator for more than a week or so, or if I'm going to put it back on its shelf and put it in deep storage, which could be there for months. I don't want ethanol in the carburetor to gum it up. So here's what I do. First, you want to check to make sure that the petcock is off. So you turn that all the way to the off position. That keeps fuel from going from the gas tank into the carburetor. And then what we're going to do now is drain the carburetor. Alright, so this is the back of the machine. This is the back panel. There are two screws that hold it on. There's one there, one there. I've already removed them, and you can peel the back panel off. There's two rubber grommets that hold it on, so you kind of have to peel a little bit. The unit's still hot from the run, so I'm just being careful. So you can see here, that's one of the grommets. So that's a grommet and that's the receiver. So you got to pull those out. If you see those little holes right there. And then there's hooks in the bottom, and those hooks you just lift the cover out. So now I've removed the cover. So this right here is the carburetor. Okay, this is called the float bowl. Okay, this is filled with gasoline, and this is what you want to empty out. So if you look here, there's a tube, and that tube runs out the bottom of the unit right here. So here's the other side. There's the tube. It comes down, and I have it kind of coming out over here. So what we're going to do is open this screw right here. This is a valve. Try to get that in focus. That's a valve right there, and that will drain the gas out of the carburetor float bowl. So let me show you that. Alright, so here I am. I have the screwdriver. It's lined up with the screw in the float bowl, and I've moved the generator to the edge of my truck bed because it's a convenient spot. There's the drain tube, which is going to send fuel down to the floor. So I'm going to go ahead and open the screw. Just a half turn, and here comes the gasoline. It's draining out of the carburetor. That's a lot of fuel. So this is all fuel that could have gummed up in the carburetor and caused a real problem. So it's still coming out. Okay, now you can see it's emptied out. It's dripping a little on my truck. But if you look, it's just about empty, a little bit of dribbling. So I'm going to leave that open for a minute. And you could look down here, that's the little puddle of gas, that'll evaporate. But that could have stayed in your carburetor, and that could have evaporated out, and the ethanol would have turned into gum, and you'd have carburetor problems. And you'd have to take this unit in for service. Alright, that's about it for me. I hope you've enjoyed my look at the Yamaha EF2000 inverter generator. I've showed you how I've come to choose it, how I've deployed it, and why it works so well for me. Another quick blurb that I wanted to throw in is one of the reasons why I chose Yamaha is because there's a Yamaha dealer down the road, and should I ever need warranty work on it or just work in general, I could bring it to them and they're authorized to work on it. It won't void the warranty, and if I'm not sure what I'm doing, they are. So my name is Ryan. If you like my video, please like it on YouTube, and leave comments if you have any questions. I'll try to help answer them. And if you guys are interested in a video for how to look at my tie-in on my panel, I can make a video about that too if you guys like. So good luck with your generator, and hope it works out for you.